So what happened is the British said, we can't allow this. If our British barristers cannot go into American courts and cram down the first central bank and the second central bank, if they can't do that, we got a problem. The people have defeated central banking, and the U.S. government started minting their own silver dollars, real large 1-cent pieces, the which only coin collectors ever see, not these little 1 penny, 1 cent these things. The real penny is about the size of a $50. The little 1 cent pieces today don't even have any copper in them. But my point is, the government issued the money, and it was honest money. It was honest money, real silver dollars, real $2.50, $5, $10, $20 gold pieces. That was the money. That was a store of value, and you worked for it. And prices remained stable and level. The British crown is really controlled by Evelyn Rothschild and his Rothschild empire, his cousins, his brothers, and all those criminals. And why do I call the Rothschilds criminals? Because they're the wealthiest people on the planet? Because they have bought us through the Federal Reserve, which is not a government entity. They issue our money. It's a private it's a for-profit corporation. And to make sure you don't get too wealthy and too uppity, they created the IRS right along back in 1913, incorporated the IRS with the Federal Reserve. And though the assessment of your IRS taxes may be voluntary, once you've self-assessed yourself and follow their 1040 guidelines, paying it is mandatory, and they will throw you in jail. As Owen Schiff found out, even though all he did was write a book telling you how to get your money back, how to assess yourself zero and get all your money back. The book is called The Federal Mafia by Owen Schiff. His son, Schiff, ran for U.S. Senate last time around, I think, from the state of New York. Irwin's wasting away in his, I think, his 80s in a federal prison for doing no criminal act at all, just teaching people the truth. Assess yourself, zero taxes, you don't have to pay them anything. And there's no penalty for it, according to the IRS own code book. We did a whole show on that once. William Benson wrote the 2-volume, big, thick 2-volume book called The Law That Never Was. And he searched in every state that existed at the time in 1913. All the state archives got certified copies proving that insufficient states ratified the 13th Amendment. I mean, not the 13th, I'm sorry, the 16th Amendment. Insufficient states ratified the 16th Amendment, which is the Federal Reserve, the income tax, all that bullshit. Did I say that? I did. Well, it's crap. They didn't ratify it. It's been an illegal tax, but every federal judge, someone brings that to them, they say, well, it's been around a long time, I'm not going to overturn it. The Rothschilds own controlling interest of the Federal Reserve. I forget now if there's 14, 16, or 18 board of directors of the Federal Reserve. But each one of them represents a central banker. Only, I think, 2 or 3 are American bankers. One is a central German banker. 2 are, I think one is out of Lloyd's of London and the Bank of London. There's 2 out of London that the Rothschilds controlled. There's 1 out of France that is Rothschild controlled. Now I think there's a Chinese or Japanese on that board. But it's a private corporation. It's not owned by our government, but we, Congress, surrendered to them the right to coin money. That means you're not free. You're not free. You're dealing with a currency that's a debt currency, and they want you there. That's exactly where they want you. So how do we become colonists again? Well, once they pass this thing doing away with honors, and people, lawyers and people who held, you didn't even have to be a lawyer. If you claimed a privilege, like I'm a knight of the Malta Knights or the Round Table or whatever, knighthood from England, I have this, you know, Queen of England or the King of England gave me this knighthood thing, you couldn't even be a U.S. citizen. Wow. That was the original now missing 13th Amendment. It was ratified, and nobody tells you that. So when the British marched, they didn't attack our naval port on Long Island in 1811, 1812. They didn't attack hardly any of our naval bases, maybe one down by New Orleans, but pretty much they had one line. They made a beeline, they landed, they marched up the Chesapeake shore, and they went right to the U.S. printing office and they burned it. Then they burned the Capitol, they burned the White House, and a few other buildings for good measure. And our Congress and the President and Dolly Madison all ran away. And we're all supposed to be so happy because Dolly rolled up Stewart's painting of George Washington and saved that for posterity, which is a good thing. I'm glad she did it. But the British won the war because they achieved their goal. Their goal was not to shoot every American. Their goal was not to conquer us physically. Their goal was to destroy the original 13th Amendment that says if you hold an honor, you can't be a U.S. citizen, much less be an elected judge, an elected district attorney, or anything elective. You're not even a U.S. citizen. You can't even vote. Well, today you've got these attorneys and these new bar associations. You got 50 state bar associations. I think the most recent one only formed in Alaska, and then maybe there's one in Oregon, was 1948 or something like that. They're fairly recent. They're mostly an East Coast thing. And they claim they can run for office, but you and I can't. That tells you you're not equal with them. And they'll come back with an argument, well, you can go to law school too. You can go to law school and take the test. No, this is not medicine. I'm not trying to be a doctor. I don't need to go to medical school because I don't want to be a doctor. But anybody who has any part of running our constitutional government should have equal opportunity to run for all the elective offices. But lawyers say, no, only members of our bar association can run. Only our club. That's an honor, people. And it violates the original, now missing 13th Amendment, which is still the law. Yes, it is. So, the British won the War of 1812 because they burned almost all the copies. But since I put that video up of Adam Adask, I've been contacted by a person who claims he's got not just the book Adam Adask printed about 20 years ago, he says, an original with the watermark and the official government stamp in the corner, copy on parchment, printed at the U.S. printing office back in 1812. I think it was 1812. His copy was printed in. And it's been in his family for 200 years. Whoa. We're going to see if we can get him to show us that copy and get an interview with him. I don't know if he's BSing me or what, but it's got me very intrigued. All this since I put up that little clip with Alfred Adask, Al Adask, who used to publish a magazine called The Anti-Shyster. Shyster is a derogatory word for lawyers, and in my view, 99% of the lawyers and judges are shysters because they avoid the common law like it's the plague, because it makes things simple and you can get your trials over quickly. The average man doesn't need a lawyer, he can defend himself. But now they want you to think you can't defend yourself. You must get a lawyer. As soon as you do, you're sold out. That's what Linda Cater found out, trying to sue Sheriff Mike Corona, who covered up the murder of her daughter, Andrea. That's what Mr. Meropoulos found out when he sued for the murder of his teenage son plus 2 grandchildren by an L.A. sheriff's deputy. And I was down there when that black judge in the federal courthouse in L.A. just let them destroy and rule out all the real evidence and then say, okay, there's no real evidence, there's no case, dismissed, jury doesn't even get to vote. I've watched enough of these bullshit cases that I can say with absolute certainty the courts are completely corrupt. Maybe Judge Regali does things. Maybe, Judge Regali's in that 2%. Or there are a few decent judges. There have been anyway. But did you know most members could be appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court back in the 1810s, 1820s, and never have been a lawyer? In fact, there were some of the best decisions ever written were written by people who had never practiced law but got appointed to the Supreme Court. In fact, I think it was Justice White in my lifetime went from the baseball field to the U.S. Supreme Court. He had a law degree, but he never practiced law. And somehow he let it be known he wanted to be on the Supreme Court. Bingo! He went from the baseball field, where he wasn't the greatest baseball player, to the U.S. Supreme Court. I think there was one of them that was called Justice White. Anyway, my point is the lawyers have subverted the legislature. Those that work in the courts often sometimes then go work in the legislature. That violates the Constitution. We have been subverted by the lawyers and the Bar Association. The British won the War of 1812 because they got the lawyers in where they shouldn't be. There shouldn't be a single lawyer who's a judge. There shouldn't be a single lawyer who's a DA. We should kick them all out. Does that sound a little radical? Read your 7th Amendment of the Constitution. It starts in the first sentence under common law and ends with common law. The problem is when you go into court, they hoodwink you and drag you into their traffic court or their family court or their equity court or some other court. Anything but the common law where the common man must be able to understand it or it isn't law. That's the key. They can pass whatever law they want, but if the common man can't understand it and you got a common man jury, we don't understand this law. That's all right. You just decide the facts. We, the judges and former members of the Bar Association, will decide what the law is. Bull. The jury is the decider both of the law and the facts, and they don't want the juries to know that. And if any juror says that while he's in jury selection, the judge will throw him off or the prosecutor will throw him off. They have so twisted our system that 2 grand juries refused to indict Michael Jackson. Didn't stop him. That crooked snake in the grass, Tom Sneddon, slithered around till he found a third grand jury, and he got them to indict Michael Jackson, but it blew up in his face. I was there. I witnessed the evidence. We'd like to see Tom Sneddon indicted for evidence, felony evidence tampering, conspiracy to commit felony evidence tampering of a brilliant young artist, Michael Jackson. But my point is, since the British won the War of 1812, since they got our money system under their control, under the Rothschilds and Rockefellers' control, we aren't free. Whoever controls what money is can buy whatever legislator or whatever congressman or U.S. senator they want.